Now hold on. Now listen. When we get to that, I gotta ask her
What's
the
up,
question.
Aditi?
I gotta ask the question right off the bat, Aditi.
Tell them that they losers,
All right.
Aditi.
Oh, right
Tell
off
them
the
that
bat.
they got losers mentality.
For me, we was talking about it, and Dustin says they may not trade Myles Garrett, but if they are serious about a rebuild and think they need to rebuild,
They should.
They should. I've always been a proponent of it's hard for me to trade Hall of Famers, so I would be very hard pressed to trade him. However, if you are getting a haul back of 2 number 1s and a number 2 pick, how could the Browns turn that down given their current state?
You know what? I still don't think that you trade a guy that is a face of the franchise, a milestone guy. And you know what? You know exactly who he is and what he is. Those picks, how do you have any idea if those picks are going to pan out or not? Picks are picks. They're potential. They're not guarantees. Myles Garrett is a guarantee.
Guarantee what?
He's a guaranteed game breaker. He's a guaranteed.
True, but you can't. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to combat this, but I
understand. No, but Dustin,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying too. And this team is in a mess because of Deshaun Watson. But now
Correct.
you rip up the whole entire team, and I should say that better. Not because of Deshaun Watson, because of the decision to give up as much capital and sink as much guaranteed money into a player that just never panned out to what they thought he would be. Yes, they are in a mess, and yes, they need to somehow fix that, but I don't think the answer is do a complete fire sale. Look, the Browns went through that when Sashi Brown was leading a team that went 1-15 and 0-16 and stockpiling the capital to then build a team that was indeed one that seemed that it could compete, and then they got itself in its mess with this whole quarterback situation. But I don't know that you now sign yourself up for another 4 or 5 years of barely winning games. I think you have to figure out what to do with what you have.
The only reason I'm with Dustin on this, Aditi.
Really? I didn't know you came around to this.
You see what I'm saying, Aditi? Losers mentality.
It's because of Myles Garrett's age.
I think it's a winner's mentality.
He's going to turn 29 next week. Like, most elite pass rushers are not good into their 30s. How many defensive ends
but since when have you looked at Myles Garrett and been like, most? Myles Garrett is a freak of nature. He is a completely different sort of body. Why? This is where when Tyvis talks about loser mentality.
Yeah.
Sure, you can say most are this, but what about the unicorns? What about the Reggie Whites? Like, what's to say that Myles Garrett, who constantly is talking about leaving a legacy unlike any other, who is clearly driven to be one of the best ever to do what he's doing, why are you ready to call him washed up at 29? I mean, look at the way that the guy is going out there every single week this year when he's been hurt since camp.
And you're right, by the way. Reggie White was good into his
Actually,
for a long time.
Actually, Michael Strahan was great into his 30s. Bruce Smith was great into his 30s.
Were they? Are you sure about that?
Yeah,
Reggie White was. That's
Reggie
true.
White definitely was good into his 30s.
I'm not. Let's see. Bruce Smith was really good. He started tailing off. Yeah, mid-30s. That's fair.
Aditi, listen.
Bringing the facts.
Later.
Aditi.
But I'd still make the trade.
No,
Bringing the
you would
facts.
not. Aditi,
Yeah, I would.
listen.
I'm throwing a flag. I'm throwing a flag on that.
Where'd she get that flag from? That was a great one. I like that.
We have this is the rumor. The rumor is that DTR is the starting quarterback as of like.
That's being reported.
Okay, whatever. Okay, it hasn't been officially confirmed yet. Let's say that he is the starting quarterback. What do you think we should expect? What should our expectations be for DTR against this horrible Cincinnati defense?
Okay, well, let's start with actually setting up DTR to succeed. So I don't want any of this nonsense like last year's Ravens game where he gets 2 hours notice on Sunday morning that he's going. I don't want any of the nonsense like the first Bengals game where he only finds out the morning of that he's actually the backup and not the emergency third quarterback. Actually prepare him this week. Actually let him take the first team reps. Actually let him work with the Jerry Judys of the world so that he's got that experience behind him. And yes, just start him. Just start him. You know what you have in Jameis. I can't, you know what you have in Jameis. Okay, it's like I said last week or the week before. Jameis keeps both teams in the game. He's fun, he's energetic, he's a great teammate, but come on now. What the Browns need to do in these final 3 games is figure out exactly what they have and who they have. So when they need to make these decisions about who to move on from, where they need to shore up the roster, where they have young talent that just hasn't had opportunity, you need to figure that out right now. And I'll tell you, all the best teams, even the ones that are competing for the playoffs, are still sort of thinking that way. You know, we had the Colts and the Broncos this past week. The Broncos are obviously playing for a playoff berth. And Sean Payton openly said about his running back room, before this season is over, we need to know what we have in Audric Estime and in Javonte Williams. Teams are supposed to be figuring that out as you go regardless. And now the Browns have a great opportunity here. Let's figure out what you have in DTR.
I don't think you have much, but yeah, I mean, at this point,
At
this point,
Give him a chance, you know? But again, like,
no, you're
he's
right.
got
You
3
should
straight
play.
weeks now. He's got 3 straight weeks to get every single first team rep,
Right.
to prep like the starter, to go into, all right, so let's see what you have. Maybe what you see that you have is this is a guy that could indeed be a long-term backup for us, a really good
Maybe
backup.
so.
Okay, fine. Then at least you know that.
Yeah.
Then you're not going and getting a Jameis Winston as your backup, for example, which they had to do last year because DTR wasn't healthy. So figure out what you have in the kid.
No, you're right. It makes sense to play him. I think it also makes sense to sit Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. Ward's has had
Loser
multiple
mentality.
concussions. Why is that? They're not. The goal of the game is not to win.
What?
If the goal was to win, they would play Jameis. They're not doing that.
Wait, what? Really?
Don't you think Jameis gives them, as flawed as he is, a much better chance to win than DTR?
No, I don't think so. Again, remember, that Bengals game, there is a reason that the team had moved to DTR as the backup quarterback. They thought through the first however many weeks of practice that DTR and Jameis were so neck and neck that it was time to give DTR the chance to be the backup. I think that you believe Jameis is so much better when you just haven't seen enough of DTR to say that. Okay, that's fine. But I also, unless there's an injury situation, it's funny, and I'll bring you the Raiders. Max Crosby, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, and I was like, Max, the season is lost. And at that point, I think he had played 6 straight games of every single rep. And then in our game against Tampa Bay, it was the 7th straight game of every single rep. I'm like, hey, Max, how about like taking it easy maybe, conserving your body? And he's like, no, I'm not wired that way. That's not how I do it. That's not what I'm about. But now, finally, he's addressing this ankle that was a high ankle sprain way back in week 3, I think it was. Most people take at least a month for a high ankle sprain. Max Crosby took 1 week. Now, finally, it's like, you know what? The ankle does need surgery. I may as well get started on it so that I'm that much forward on the rehab. If you've got a situation like that with Myles Garrett, who arguably may be needing some sort of medical
I think he does.
function on his feet,
Yeah.
maybe if Denzel Ward is dealing with something lingering, then okay. But I think just for the sake of, hey, we're going to tank? Hey, we don't want to win? No. That's not how you think.
No,
Losers been
no,
down.
no, no, wait a second. Hold on.
Needs off-season surgery, and you can start the rehab process sooner.
Yeah.
Then okay, that's a valid reason to shut it down.
Okay, so they both have had legitimate injuries this year. That's why I'm saying it. I'm not saying they're purposely trying to lose. I'm saying in my opinion, when you bring in DTR to see what he could be, in my opinion, it's clear that Jameis is the better quarterback and gives you a better chance to win. Now,
Okay,
you
that's your
obviously
opinion.
disagree.
No,
right?
yeah,
And
that's your
fine.
opinion.
I'm just saying, if
I don't like
Yeah.
you writing off the possibility of being able to win with DTR. Like,
I mean,
already,
you
before
can
even
win.
giving the kid a chance, you're just like, nope, there's no way they're winning with him.
No, I agree with you. They should play him. I just don't think he's there gives them the best chance to win. But I don't care about that. For me, I understand coaches care about that. But I find it hard to believe that Kevin Stefanski was saying Deshaun Watson gave him the best chance to win early in the year. That obviously wasn't true.
Yes, but we all know that there's a whole lot associated with having to say that. And
All right.
that's a whole other conversation that's not necessarily as linear as any other conversation. I'll say this. I really do firmly believe that the way you end a season can carry over into the next one. I remember Kurt Warner telling me about this with the Cardinals one year, and it was the next year that they went to the Super Bowl. Think about Dan Campbell, the year that they finally put it all together when they were, 1-6, 1-7, whatever
Right.
it was, and then they finally started winning. And then the last game of the season, the Packers are playing for a playoff berth. The Lions are playing for nothing. The Lions win, and that propelled them into this past season. So, and then this season too. I think that there is carryover, and I think ending on a high note, I think ending with some sort of strength is always a beneficial, good thing, as opposed to limping into the offseason.
I think it also depends, though. I mean, for every example you just gave right there, there's a Jim Schwartz with the Lions, there's a Eric Mangini with the Browns, where they won the final 4 games, and you think it's momentum, and then you keep the wrong coach, and like just because you finish the season strong, I don't necessarily agree in the NFL as much maybe as a college or like high school it would carry over, because there's so much change in the league. It's such a business.
And that's fair too.
But I do think that, like, for the Browns, you know, a lot can happen, Aditi, in the final 3 weeks that could determine the outcome of these coaches and Andrew Berry, in terms of how they finish the year. And to that point, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was also saying, and on top of that, I think it's really important to the franchise. Remember, Dustin, this is a franchise that's trying to get a new stadium built. Mm-hmm. And if you limp into the offseason and just look like you have no plan and no hope and no hype, how much energy are you going to be able to generate around that?
Oh, these fans are idiots. They love everything about this team. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm an idiot. I live here. Okay, so like we're all idiots. We buy into this team no matter what. I mean, we'll eat whatever they serve us.
Yeah,
I mean it doesn't
been a
matter.
Garbage franchise.
That's why the owners take advantage of us.
Yeah.
You know, it's really funny that you say this, Dustin, because I think you guys know that my 5-year-old loves to tell everybody that she's a Browns fan. That She was born in Cleveland and she's a Browns fan. And this weekend I was in Denver, and the commissioner and his wife Jane Goodell were there pregame. They were recognizing the Broncos inspired change maker. And Jane Goodell and I were talking about how she grew up a Bears fan, and, you know, she still is a Bears fan. And I said, ooh. So then I said to her, you know, it's funny. I just had this conversation with someone who accused me of committing child abuse if I allow my daughter to continue being a Browns fan.
They might not be wrong.
And this person, well, okay, so this is what I said to her. So I said, this person said to me, you are setting up your child for a lifetime of heartbreak. Am I really an awful mother if I don't sort of dissuade her?
No, you're a good mother, because
Rooting for a crappy team builds character in a child.
It's loyalty.
Okay, and
Yes.
exactly
It's loyalty.
That's what Jane Goodell was saying to me.
Yeah.
That it's those fan bases that Dustin is talking about. Instead of calling them idiots, Jane Goodell was saying it's those fan bases that suffer the heartbreak and keep coming back that are the most loyal people, the most dependable people, the most hardened people, and that actually it's building character.
Or
if my
Aditi, you
little
could be
Kaya
teaching your daughter.
continues.
Or Aditi, you could be teaching your daughter to stay in bad relationships. I don't know about this one.
Yeah. There's always more than one way to look at it. That's for sure.
We thought that there was a chance. Let me tell you, the girls got sassed, though. We thought there was a chance that my crew was being sent out to Vegas to do the Jaguars and the Raiders. And so my son and my husband definitely were like, let's go to Vegas. Let's do that trip. And then it was decided that no, our crew would actually have the Bengals and the Browns. So I was FaceTiming home on Saturday, and Nico said to me, he said, so are we going to Vegas? Are we going to Vegas? And I said, no, buddy, Mommy's got Cincinnati. And he said, oh, well, who are they playing? And I said, the Browns. And Kaya, overhearing this, goes, go Browns. And I said, well, baby, it's not really been the Browns year. And Matt says, my husband says, well, that's okay. You can root for the Steelers. Or that's okay. At least we still have the Steelers. And Kaya said, Daddy, they're not in that game. So go Browns. She's
I like this.
smart
I
enough
like
to
this
get
child.
it.
She got more enthusiasm than a lot of this fan base, you know?
Oh, she does.
Why
But
would
she's
you
also-
have
she's also the
enthusiasm
kid.
right now?
Well, it's a battle of Ohio. Like, we got Jamar Chase versus Denzel Ward. That's still must-see TV. There was a lot of chirping going on. Now, G knew it's not going to be there. So,
Unless you're G, who thinks that you should sit Denzel Ward.
well, all three
come
of them,
on, like, when you
all
think
three
about-
of them said it, Aditi, losers mentality.
Yeah, Tyvis, think back to that game. What year was it? It was the Baker Odell year. So that was 2021. Was that year?
When
DPJ?
Odell messed his or tore his hand.
Is that the
or his
DPJ
heel?
game?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the week that Odell doesn't show up to practice, or he's told to stay home, his dad puts out the video. Look, he's always open. The Browns suggest that Odell go ahead and stay home. Yeah, that was 2021. And then Baker and the Browns go into Cincinnati, and the game opens with Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase. Denzel Ward picks it off in the end zone or at the goal line and returns it 99 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Remember?
I remember
Like,
that.
And how'd the rest of the season go for the Browns after?
What you talking about
what'd
is
you say?
irrelevant. He said, how did the rest of the season go after that game?
Whatever, but sometimes you need those moments. You need those magic moments. So yes, Jamar Chase versus Denzel Ward is a magic moment. That's something fun. That's
I
something
hear
to
you.
pull up
I
to
guess,
the stadium for.
I guess unlike you and Tyvis, I'm looking out for the careers of these players.
Well, Myles wanted
Maybe
Hunter
Denzel
sack.
Ward and Myles Garrett will be able to play another year because they didn't play 3 meaningless games with injuries.
But
this
what
year.
if he's going to get his Hunter sack this game?
So we'll get his 100 sack
Yeah.
next year. What's the difference?
It's a big one. Daddy going up against Trey Hendrickson. You know, they like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, not against, but
Yeah,
yeah,
you
on
know-
the same
yeah,
Maybe
Yeah.
Joe Burrow will give him a Brett Favre moment.
That would be a disgrace. And Brett Favre's a disgrace. Joe Burrow is not. So
Yeah, I don't see Joe Burrow doing that.
no chance.
What's the whole
gonna be
Batmobile
sacked.
thing? Am I allowed to ask him about the Batmobile thing? Like, why would you spend $3 million
I
on a
think
car
he
you
was
can't
joking.
drive?
He
No.
said he was joking, didn't he?
Oh, he doesn't actually have it?
I thought he said he was joking. I thought it came
I
out
don't
like a
think
couple
so.
days later. Said he said I don't really have that. Let me.
No, I mean,
not
all I
followed
know
that
then
story.
is the
I
whole
think-
thing about like
Adi-
the robbery at his house and the swimsuit model who apparently is living there, but was
Yeah, he
also
definitely does
identified
not
by
want
the
to
New York
talk about
Post
that,
as an
Aditi. I'll
employee.
tell you that.
So,
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
He was like, I feel like my privacy's been violated in multiple
But
ways.
that woman is supposedly a lesbian, so I don't know.
how do you know
How did
this?
you know that?
I was reading about it. She supposedly worked for him. I mean, it sounds fishy, but I don't know.
How do you know all those details?
I was reading about it.
Save him. Save him.
I don't know if it's
Didi, it's been a pleasure.
no, real quick, Aditi.
Guys,
Hey, wait a second. Wait a second. Seriously.